Viewpoints on the talk station, FM 107, AM 1240. Joining us for a few minutes this evening, we have North Carolina Speaker of the House, Tim Moore. He's traveling as we speak, so there may be some road noise, which we can fully understand. And we're talking with him this evening about a decision last week to call for a vote on the governor's veto of Senate Bill 359. And with that, Mr. Speaker, good evening. Thanks for joining us, as always. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. It's good to be with you this evening.
Always a pleasure, and I quite frankly a surprise. And I've got to look back to previous experiences with the legislature when it came to issues of vetoes of the governor, and of course, in this particular case, it's the Born Alive legislation. You had the privilege and the prerogative to bring this vote up at any time, and we know of previous experiences where your predecessors, that is in the Democrat Party, had chosen to be a little more selective on the times when they were bringing up vetoes that were contentious. And the idea, of course, you always want to know the number of votes before you call for the vote. But your decision to call for this vote, if you will, this early, was somewhat of a surprise. What's the background on this?
You know, we've met with the bill sponsors both in the Senate and the House, with the advocates for the bill, and they feel like that we've reached the point where we have reached out to all of the members as much as we can, and that we're in the best position we can to move forward with the veto override. But I'll tell you, it's really sad that we're even having to override a veto on what should be such a common sense bill. Many folks have not followed this bill, but and those on the left have tried to make this about it being an abortion bill, but it really isn't. What this bill simply says is if someone goes in for an abortion, but the child ends up being delivered, of course, delivered alive, that the standard of care is that the doctor must provide is to care for that child the same way he would any other child that's born, to provide medical attention to that child. Also, there's a reporting requirement, but to make sure that child is taken care of. And this is we've seen just. I hate to give a graphic example, but I think folks need to understand what we're talking about. There was a gentleman who was covered in the media recently, who during a failed abortion attempt. Actually, his leg was cut off, and it induced labor. That he was born as a baby missing a leg, and has gone through all of his life missing a leg. Had to have a prosthetic, but he was maintained and kept alive. But there are plenty of stories out there, unfortunately, where this would happen. A child would be born, and then the child was killed, and that's just wrong. I mean, reasonable minds. I mean, I'm pro-life. Reasonable minds can disagree on different issues surrounding abortion. I will make that concession. But no one should disagree with the fact that if a child is delivered, baby is born, whether it was an intended abortion or not, that baby must be tended to, and that child deserves to live.
I agree with you, Mr. Speaker. And again, Speaker Tim Moore with us, North Carolina House Speaker Tim Moore with us this afternoon for a few minutes. The question I ask is, if this legislation isn't passed, if it at the time of birth of any child, the doctors and the mother or parents can just arbitrarily decide, well, doesn't have the right color hair, hands aren't big enough, feet aren't big, whatever. They can decide, well, we'll just let it die. I mean, it is. I know that that's an extreme statement, but it seems to resonate with this issue. It is stunning, Mr. Speaker, that it's an issue for the members of the House. Let's set the governor aside. It is stunning that it's even an issue or debate in the House. Your observation on that?
Absolutely. I would have thought that this bill should have passed unanimously. This is this is something that should be so common sense that we take care of children. We take care of an innocent child who was born. And the fact that we're even having to have this debate is just blows my mind, frankly. And what some on the left have tried to do is they've tried to confuse this with, some of the bills that have been taken up, for example, in Alabama and Missouri that are shortening the time period for abortions. This has nothing to do with it. This is about once a child is born. But let me tell you why it's so pertinent that we're discussing this now. For years, North Carolina had a law in place that said that you could not have an abortion beyond 20 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the courts, and I think were probably erroneous decisions by some pretty liberal judges, have struck that down. So now in North Carolina, there's not that hard rule about when someone can have an abortion. So you could have someone having an abortion very late term when that child is fully viable, fully able to live outside the womb of that mother. And then God forbid somebody actually even does to try to do such a thing. If they try at that stage of pregnancy, it can actually induce labor.
Uh-huh.
And we owe it to, number one, that shouldn't be happening anyway. But number two, if that does and that child's born, that child deserves to live and should be afforded the same standard of care that a doctor would be required to provide to any other baby being born in a hospital.
Mr. Speaker, I again go back to my earlier comment. I was somewhat surprised at the decision to call for the vote now. Again, we recognize it's the privilege of the of leadership, the chair, to determine when the vote would be called, and it could be called at a time when the numbers were more in favor. You need, as I understand, 60% vote to override the governor's veto. Question for you. What are you hearing there among all the members of the House, Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, whomever? What is the conversation? It strikes me that they should be all, both conservatives and liberals, should all be getting phone calls today, tonight, maybe all this weekend. Have they been getting phone calls? Are they feeling the sense? As much as what happens tomorrow in that vote is, sadly, Mr. Speaker, an image and an indication of what North Carolina feels.
Well, we are. I know that members are getting calls. We've got calls, and I think that there are a number of calls. But I would encourage your listeners to continue to call, increase the calls, because my colleagues and I need to hear from folks around the state. And this is a matter where members need to vote their conscience. And it's, you can. This is one of those issues where folks can have differing issues of abortion and still vote for this bill, because this has nothing to do with abortion. This is about making sure we are taking care of that child when it's born. And as far as the vote being called now, we just think the time is now to move on this bill. The sponsors are ready, and we're ready to put the question before the House, and we hope that the override will pass. But we know this is going to be close. We know this will be decided within one or two votes. So it's going to be close, but we're hoping it comes out the right way.
Well, you may appreciate my comment on this. I hope it isn't close, because, again, I go back to my comment earlier. The vote that's taken tomorrow in the chambers sadly represent North Carolina. And I'm saying this to the audience listening to the program. If the legislature doesn't hear your concerns and your opinion, and the vote is taken by passive agreement, we acknowledge that this is how we see life here in North Carolina. And Mr. Speaker, I sure hope that North Carolinians across the state see life as being something precious and something worthy of maintenance and support. And so I applaud this. Very quickly, and again, thank you for your time today. Again, Speaker Tim Moore with us. When will the vote be called? Is there a particular time of day that people might want to be paying close attention to?
Yes, we will go into session at 3 p.m. tomorrow, and this will be one of the first bills taken up.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. I do appreciate it. And, well, best of luck in this endeavor, because, again, I go back with the decision made by North Carolina represents me. And my voice is this bill does need to be supported and needs to be passed. Thank you for your time, Mr. Speaker. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Viewpoints on the Talk Station, FM 107, AM 1240.